In this episode of Student of Life with Joe Hafner, we will answer the question, what is a student of life? Joe will discuss how to discover your purpose, timeless truths that help you find fulfillment, and much more. For show notes, links, and other resources, please visit studentoflifepodcast.com/1. That's studentoflifepodcast.com/1.
Welcome to Student of Life, the podcast for people seeking personal and professional fulfillment. I'm Joe Hafner, the host, and I'm excited to have you here with me today because today is the first episode of this podcast. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, a lot of time contemplating it, a lot of time getting ready for what I'm going to share with you today and over the coming weeks. So today, I really just want to start with kind of an overview of what this is all about, what this crazy idea is all about. So let's just start with, what's a student of life? So a student of life is someone who's seeking personal and professional fulfillment. That's why I said that at the beginning when I introduced the podcast. Someone seeking fulfillment, they're a seeker of knowledge. That's a deep thinker, maybe someone who's a bit of a philosopher. If you're someone where you have a quiet place where you go and ponder things, you're probably like-minded to me, and this is the type of podcast that you'd want to listen to. Do you come up with tons of ideas and come up with tons of questions? Is your brain always engaged? It's always spinning, always thinking. That's what this is all about, to find those kind of people and let you know that you're not alone. You're not the only one who thinks that way. And also to find a place where maybe your thoughts are challenged a little bit, where you're challenged to think outside the box or think of things you don't normally think about. Do you listen to podcasts and read a lot of books and watch the Discovery Channel and Nat Geo and the History Channel because you just want to keep learning things and find out what's going on in the world? Then I think this might be a place that you'll find that you feel comfortable listening to what we're talking about here. So here's the big one, and this is big with my wife too, is that she doesn't always understand how my brain works. So if you're around a lot of people who don't understand how your brain works, and then they kind of give you an odd look when you're talking about the latest inspiration that you've had because you're such a deep thinker, then I think you and I are going to get along fine. You're going to enjoy your time here. Here's my goal. My goal is to get you thinking. I want to help you come up with questions to ponder in your quiet time, right? So I want to talk about your life and your purpose. I want to talk about figuring out what you're great at doing. I want to create a space where you're listening to a kindred spirit when you come and check out my podcast. Here's something to think about. There's 2 times in the human life in America when the brain actually begins to atrophy. The first one is at the end of formal education, and the second one is when people retire. So your mind is a use it or lose it organ, and hopefully you're always using it. That's my goal, is to always give you reason to be using it, because when people finish their education, they think the learning's over. And when they retire, how many times do you hear a story about someone who retires and then a few months later they pass away because they have no purpose anymore? They're not using their brain anymore. They're not thinking anymore. The whole idea is, I want you to use your brain. I want you to be thinking. I want to challenge you to think of things that maybe you haven't thought of before. This show, going back to the original premise, it's for those seeking fulfillment. So what does it mean to seek fulfillment? I believe that fulfillment is not a destination, it's a way of life. You never really gain full fulfillment. It's something that you're always seeking. My definition is that fulfillment is achieved when the purpose you were created for is fully aligned with your personal core values. So let me break that down a little bit for you. What's your purpose? What did God create you for? I think it starts by looking at a few things to figure out what your purpose in life is, What are you truly great at doing? If you listen to Dan Sullivan or read any of his books, Strategic Coach, great. He's got several great podcasts I love to listen to. 10X Talk with Joe Polish, The Joy of Procrastinating with Dean Jackson. And he's also got Exponential Wisdom that he does with Peter Diamandis. He does that one with. So he's a very smart guy who's been working with entrepreneurs for his whole adult life, and just a brilliant man. And he talks about what you're great at as your unique ability. And everyone has 3 or 4 things that they are truly great at doing. what you're truly great at doing, that's a good sign that might be part of your purpose while you're put on the earth. Another way to look at it is what activities just bring you joy when you're doing them. Something that you just love to do, and when you're doing it, you lose track of time completely. So you start doing it, and then hours later, you realize that, oh my gosh, 12 hours have passed and I've been in here working on this all the time. Those kinds of things are the things that you can find that you can figure out what your purpose is in life. And so then when you start thinking about those things, how much of your time do you actually spend working in that area where your purpose is? If you're not spending 85% or more of your time in that area, you need to figure out how to increase it, because that's when you're going to start to have fulfillment, when you're doing that thing that you're great at, that thing that brings you joy, that thing that God created you to do. The whole idea is when you're focused and spending all of your time in that area, that's when you can, kind of rise up to your full potential, the full potential that God put in you. One aspect of what we're going to talk about is how do you learn to spend a ton of time doing the things that you're great at, the things you were born to do. In my definition, like I said, the first part of fulfillment is to figure out what your purpose is. The second part is your core values or your core beliefs. I want to talk for just a second about René Descartes. I told you I was going to talk about philosophy, and I'm a bit of a philosopher. René Descartes was a French philosopher who spent his entire life trying to figure out what he knew for sure. You may have heard of the term cogito ergo sum. That's Descartes. He came up with that. That means I think, therefore I am. So what he wanted to do, not to get it too deep in the weeds with telling about how he went about this, but what he wanted to do was really get down to the essence of what can I know for sure about life, about me, about anything, about my existence. And when he started thinking about things, all he knew for sure was that he existed because he was a thinking being. So the fact that he could think, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, that he knew for sure that he existed because he could think, and that's all he knew for sure. Core values is not quite that extreme, but it's kind of like that in that you look at what you believe and you say, okay, what are the things that I believe that no matter what anybody does, they can't change my mind, that I'm always going to believe it. You might believe in God, that you believe God is sovereign over the world and over your life. You might believe that you should have integrity or honesty and that you need to operate that way in your life. And we'll get into more of that in a future episode. I'm just kind of going through the overview of all of this. If you haven't thought about that before, start thinking about what are your core values? What are those things that you believe in? It's worth the effort to figure these things out. And most people don't take the time to do it. And what happens is they just kind of drift along in life without really knowing where they're going, because your core values are kind of like an anchor that help you set your path. They're a filter that you can filter life through to figure out what you believe and where you're going to go, and look at opportunities and be able to decide, does this opportunity fit with what I believe? That's the basis of my thesis here about fulfillment, that you take your purpose that you were born to do, you get it in alignment with your core beliefs and your core values. And something interesting about core values, if there's an area that you've thought them through and there's an area that you want to be a core value, hey, guess what? You can go ahead and make that a core value and change your behavior to match what you believe. There's some people out there who they claim to believe something and their behavior doesn't match up with it. But again, we will talk about that on a future episode. Right now, if you're seeking fulfillment, what's standing in the way of you achieving it? What are the limiting factors in your life? Certainly people have a limiting factor of time, focus, desire. If you're still listening to this at this point in the podcast, I'm assuming you're willing to make the time to think these things through, and you probably have the desire if you're at this point. Maybe you need focus, or you need to learn how to focus. That's a problem that a lot of people have, that they're unable to focus, especially in the world that we're in, where everything is a soundbite. Used to be back in the 60s and 70s, if you did a presentation, you had, I think, 7 or 8 minutes to gain someone's attention. Now you have about 7 or 8 seconds. And if you don't capture their attention in 7 or 8 seconds, you lose them completely. No wonder that focus is a big problem with people. focus might be an issue that you have. What other limitations can stop you? Most limitations are self-imposed. Most limitations are between our ears. Most everything that comes in your path that could stop you from achieving your fulfillment, it can all be overcome with the proper amount of time, focus, desire, and determination. If you have those 4 things, you can overcome just about anything. There's stories everywhere of very successful people who were able to achieve amazing things because of time, focus, desire, and determination. I mean, how often do you hear about someone who showed up on America's shores with nothing in their pocket but a few bucks, and then 5 years later, they're a multimillionaire? If you have the focus, you can achieve whatever you want. Let's talk about one other thing here. Most podcasts that I listen to, and a lot of the thought leaders these days, they spend a lot of time talking about how fast our world is changing. They talk about what you should be doing to prepare for those changes. That's definitely something that's important that we need to contemplate and think about how to do that. But in this podcast, I want to spend more time thinking and talking about the stuff that's unchanging, the things that never change. What are the timeless things in business and life that prepare us for a fast-changing world? In future episodes, here's some of the things that we're going to look at. Like we talked about earlier, we're going to look at core values and how they shape your vision for your life or your business. How filtering things through your core values, decisions, thoughts, people you hire, filtering all that through your core values is going to help you create a great culture for your family and for your life and for your business. We're going to talk about how focused intensity helps you change your habits and achieve goals. People do the impossible every day because they have a laser-like focus. Think about the Manhattan Project. When the U.S. was in World War II and they were in a race against Nazi Germany and Japan, for that matter, to try and build a nuclear bomb to win the war. And it was impossible. Everybody agreed it was impossible that they could do what they did in the time they did it. But they had such focused intensity with really the survival of America on the line that they were able to take that intensity and do something truly amazing in a relatively short period of time. And that's the truth. If you have focused intensity, you can accomplish anything. Next thing, talk about putting passion and knowledge together to achieve mastery of something. Think of Malcolm Gladwell in his book, The Outliers, where he talks about the 10,000 hour rule, where if you want to be world-class, total master above and beyond all the other experts, you need 10,000 hours of practice in your area of expertise. And that's what it takes to set you apart. What is your passion? Where do you have your knowledge? How are you working those together to gain mastery in some area of your life where you want to be great? Then there's discipline. The whole idea of learning to grind, doing the little things to make you successful when no one's looking. You know, are you willing to do what it takes when nobody's watching you? There's an author and speaker, his name's Rory Vaden, who wrote a book called Take the Stairs. And he says, successful people do the things they don't want to do, even when they don't feel like doing them. And that's the difference between someone who's dissatisfied with their life because nothing ever happens for them and someone who's a super high achiever who has everything that they want in life. Take the stairs instead of the escalator. Then we're going to talk about the importance of protecting your energy and your confidence. In our lives, energy is like a battery where you get a certain charge for the day and then that drains away as the day goes by. So the two biggest drains of energy and confidence are decision making and problem solving. If you're going to have lots of decisions to be made, those are going to drain your energy. If you have lots of problem solving to do, that's going to drain your energy. So lots of great thinkers have spent time contemplating how you protect your energy, how you protect your confidence, and strategies you use to take decisions out of the mix, to make problem solving more systematic so you don't spend a lot of time thinking about the problems. And that's something I'm looking forward to talking about in the future. I have some very definite ideas on that I want to share. And then the last biggest unchanging thing is people. By far the most important unchanging truth is that everything in life is about people. If we can talk about family, friends, team members, customers, vendors, the guy you pass in the street, the person you talk to in the checkout line, it's all about people. if you will pour yourself into people and pour yourself into building up people, you're going to build yourself up at the same time. In fact, one of the things that kind of led to me taking on this podcast was I've, for a little while now, have been doing a weekly Facebook show, video program called Short Attention Span Wisdom. And I end every show by saying, I believe that we can learn something from everyone we meet. All we have to do is ask. And that is something I truly believe. And I give people an opportunity to give their 30 seconds to 60 seconds of wisdom that they want to share with the world. And I believe people have a lot to offer, and it's a two-way street. If we have the humility to be able to listen to people and hear what they have to say and hear what we have to learn from them, that can make all the difference in the world. It can help you get to where you want to go. And then also, too, you have a lot to give as well, where if you pour yourself into those people, you won't regret it. That's the first episode. I'll put a link to Short Attention Span Wisdom in the show notes. That's it for now. That's the end of my first episode. I'm so glad that you joined me. I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. Please subscribe to Student of Life at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you go to for your favorite podcasts. Visit us online at studentoflifepodcast.com. That's studentoflifepodcast.com. We are on Facebook at Student of Life. Email us at joe@studentoflifepodcast.com. If you enjoyed the show, help us spread the word by telling someone you know about Student of Life. And please join us again next time. Thanks!